Elevate, resonate, participate in creation. Got to feel our relation. Yeah. All the strength that we need to proceed comes with patience. Ooh, yeah, yeah. We on the road to the promised land. Take all your brothers and sisters hand in hand. We on the road to the promised land. So let's carry each other when we can. We on the road.
Welcome to the show. Uh, we're here with Jeremy Anderson of TreeHouse in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Awesome.
Um, we are excited to be here and to talk about some music and um, consciousness and life and all those fun things. Um, so, Jeremy here is a great creator and musician, and this is Higher Frequencies, and we talk about your frequency and your resonance, and music is such a fundamental influence and useful tool for your frequency and maintaining or changing it, like if you need to, like if you're in certain places. So, um, in my mind's eye, musicians are modern day shamans because if their heart and mind is in the right place and they're expressing that through their music, then it's medicine for other people. And so, um, a lot of things that I listen to personally, I would call medicine music, and that's how I found Jeremy and Treehouse because of the message and the frequency and the harmony that it brings amongst people. Uh, it's beautiful, and like one of the first songs I ever heard um, was Blessings, and just listening to it and singing it, like I was overwhelmed with the feelings of blessings for all the blessings that we're all blessed for. So like that's a really magical thing to be able to do um, for the world. It's a beautiful gift. It's awesome, and I'm highly grateful for
Thank you, man.
it.
Yeah, I enjoy doing it. I didn't realize, starting out the the full reality of the impact that it would, when you write a song, especially nowadays, you can put it out fairly easily and it'll go across the world, the whole world. Somebody's listening to Blessings in China right now.
Right.
So that's always wild to keep in mind.
Right. Beautiful time to be alive to have that connection, that possibility.
Yeah, we started before that, before Spotify existed,
Yeah, and like and the
so
internet was even like popular type
yeah, and we
shit,
just
yeah.
you got to find like random websites you could throw a single on.
Right.
But that kind of helped when Spotify started and started reaching everywhere on the internet. And
Right.
Blessings actually got picked up by Spotify and exposed to a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Um Sugar Shack comes to mind because that's where I found you and then found that you lived in Myrtle Beach and then instantly like seen you within a week of that because of living so close myself. That's a
That's
really
right.
interesting new take on producing music and sharing like an outlet like Sugar Shack. It's got real broad range. And so I was lucky enough, to have Sugar Shack and you be on Sugar Shack to for the universe to be able to
Yeah.
send you out there to me.
Yeah, that's they've expanded a lot, mind-blowingly. when we started out, when they reached out to us and we worked with them, I had no idea that, and they're essentially the forefront of a big part of the modern genre.
For sure, like indie music type stuff, like independently produced type
Yeah,
stuff.
and it's
Yeah.
almost like and they've got like a awesome model, a lot of those bands never consider doing their songs like acoustic or stripped down like that. It's almost a
True,
continuation
yeah.
of like MTV Unplugged, but it's their main format.
Right, right. I didn't think about that. There is some songs of I've heard of artists where I prefer their original Sugar Shack stripped down version over album versions. It has a unique
Yeah,
pulls a uniqueness out, you
yeah,
know.
they created some gems. Yeah.
Um, so what kind of things are you guys working on? Like what you got going up on new with Treehouse and
Well, we were just in the studio today working on some throat singing.
right, right.
So I appreciate you rolling in the studio, laying that down. We're gonna fit that into so we've been working on Alchemical Equations song collaboration with Indubious, and I've got like a slew of like 8 or 9 different songs working with different people or just kind of sprinkling them out there.
Nice, nice, nice. I really like the from the medicine music that I listen to, all the artists seem to be creating this sharing circle with like features. I really enjoy seeing those types of artists reach out and feature so many other artists. I think that's a part of a new paradigm shift, because we're leaving these times of me and going to the we. And so, copyrights and all these different things and these feelings of ownership, like the more we let go of the I, the more we let go of these ideas of possession. And when we start to mold these new things, so when you feature artists and you do collaborations like this, it's just these new beautiful moldings. It just creates this whole new energy and it brings out different things in both artists. It's just a whole part of the whole cycle of the new.
Right. It's like ours, the concept of ours is okay if we extend it to everyone, you know,
Right.
when all of us are, back to one or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Fortunate Youth does really well at like always being inclusive. Whoever they're playing a show with is usually up on stage with them by the end of the night. And Dan Kelly made a good point. Like, that's a, a big part. That's a central point of music, is to see those collaborations, especially live. Like, that's where the gold shines,
It's really unique and,
Yeah,
and on the spot
every night.
flavor. Yeah, yeah.
And I've kind of stumbled onto that. We're still, to this day working on how can we make our show focus on that,
Right.
you know.
More the sharing family jam type thing, and like bringing like new
Yeah,
new twists to things type
yeah,
stuff would be.
writing songs with the intention of that. Like this is the part of the song live where
Yeah, yeah, I got you.
everybody does this part or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah,
That's the fun. I mean, that's what makes everything worth it,
right.
when you're playing live and you're all connected.
I guess independent music, because I would consider, most of the artists I listen to as independent, this it's become a real new thing, was, basically unheard of when we were younger.
Right.
And now to me, that's the only place you get that medicine music or this authenticity, but that's all also where you're getting that tribal gathering uh type of creation. Um, and it's inevitably shedding the system which constrained artists in the past, which is like, record labels and meet this deadline for blank, blank, blank. I think it's really cool that independent, you know, we even call it independent or indie artists is becoming more popular or broad range or in the focus. I don't really know how to word it, you know.
I think there's, I mean, the whatever we think the main thing is mostly an illusion anyway. Uh, you know, with every success story you see, there's always like the horror story of a record label back in the day where it's like it's got to be the worst to be famous and broke, you know, because you got like, fuck, I need to make some money next week, but I can't like just I can't have people see me working at Burger King or whatever. So, there, what has happened with the progress of it is just there's 100,000 new avenues or more. All the avenues of music have become strengthened, you know, so you can really pursue your own path, and you don't have to be that number one hit chart topping shit. Like at least in my opinion, like I don't feel that pressure necessarily. Like, not to say that I'm like, oh, if I apply myself, I could be number one. Rihanna's got to watch out, you know. But I think there's plenty of comfortable places on the scale of or the dimensions of pathways that you can pursue music, and especially nowadays in a authentic and genuine way that is still sustainable and pursuable.
Right. Um, you know, so your music has a real um spiritual essence to it. How was did you grow up religious or anything like that, or did you just like come to an awareness point to where that kind of bled through into your music or the things you do? Was there any type of upbringing or anything that happened that kind of awoken the lion inside of you per se?
Slow and steady progress, I'd say, but you know, uh, hallucinogens or plant medicines definitely helped, you know, thrust along the way at certain points. But early on, you know, it wasn't really strict uh, religion or anything in my household. Uh, but my grandparents would want me to go to church every once in a while. So I've been to church, you know, in Southern Church, Baptist Church. When I was a teenager, I got into some trouble with the law, and they had, instead of like going to court, they have like a optional program where they force you to go to church.
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
Welcome to South
yeah, and I
Carolina.
was like, and I asked them, I was like, what if I'm atheist? And they're like, you got to find an atheist church and have them report to us. I was like, what? I should have used it as an opportunity to find a Buddhist temple, and but you know, I just found a cool Methodist church nearby that would sign off, and I still went to all the shit, and it was with a bunch of other delinquent kids, you know, so
Right.
um, I kind of had obviously a rebellious nature, at least from that point, you know, like being forced to go to church. I'm like, but from early on, I was a kid who asked why about everything, annoyingly. So, um, and I was sick, even as a little kid, I was sick of like so many people being complacent because I'm like, do you even know why? Have
Because
you
majority of the
ever
time,
asked fucking
yeah,
why?
majority
It's
of the
not
time.
just like that, you know? So, that, you know, I thought about it a lot as a teenager and didn't really get too far in my journey at that point.
That was kind of the seed of like
Yeah,
real
I mean, you got to be
questioning,
in
I
a state
guess.
of discomfort or, you know what I'm saying, to pursue. If you're content with,
Unknowing.
yeah, then
Yeah.
you're not gonna see. So I went through, you know, good old awkward phase of just nihilism or something a little bit. But then went to started studying philosophy. I ended up majoring in philosophy in school, and
No shit.
so because I was like I was about to give up and just fucking fuck around, which I still think I would have ended up back on a similar path.
Right.
But it was overall a good experience. My parents were like, at least go to some local college. And I was like originally going for like marketing or whatever, but I took one philosophy course. I was like, I'm switching colleges. I'm going to a philosophy, like majoring in philosophy, and I took Eastern philosophy and environmental ethics and logic and philosophy of mind and classic philosophy and
Find any
shit. I can't remember.
seeds in there? Like any like
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that contributed to Eastern philosophy specifically, like Buddhism really got me there. And that was a big seed that I saw a lot, everything connected to from then on.
right.
Uh, but like we were talking about the other day, like sometimes you might feel like at a certain point in your life, you let your consciousness, like I said, I feel like I came into my being when I was like 13,
Right, right.
where it was just like a difference in like, oh, I'm here. I felt
Yeah.
like I was just like, oh, I was like a in a cocoon,
Right.
you know. And once I got that spark, I
It's kind of
relatively stayed on that. I mean,
it's kind of something that just grew over time.
yeah, but it could have easily gone off track, and I would have like been a homeless crackhead without the right help. Because I've been like, man, fuck it, this is all bullshit. I might as well, whatever, you know. I don't
Yeah.
know, but luckily, people had some faith in me, and I gained some faith in myself to,
To keep seeking
yeah.
knowledge per
And
se.
I was heavy into music. Music was a big refuge early on.
Did you have any like specific artists that like may have influenced you or like boosted you in that time or
In that time, what was I listening to, man? Yeah, that I mean, honestly, so right when I switched, I changed colleges to College of Charleston and moved down to Charleston, South Carolina, and started taking all these philosophy classes and started taking shrooms a little bit more. And this one time, just getting into Radiohead, sitting in the dark, listening to Radiohead and some shrooms, watching Blue Planet.
it's
It's
like
like Planet
this
Earth, the
yeah,
ocean
yeah, yeah.
edition,
Hmm.
and just, I mean, that does it. That puts you there.
Right.
So, uh, that's actually so that specific night that I'm thinking of in Charleston, spurred the lines that started the song Ziggy. So we drew the whole world into circles and lines. Like me and Trey Moody, our original drummer, back in the day, then we were drawing circles and lines. And we're like, but what is like the fundamental shape or point, or it's a point, but a circle is just a bunch of points,
Right.
an infinite amount of points, that kind of. So we drew the whole world into circles and lines was a line in the song Ziggy.
Right.
And that's essentially what it's about. Ziggy was like seeking a wise man, which I feel like a magic mushrooms are like the embodiment of that plant spirit is
Yes.
the wise
Yes.
man.
Right. Right, for sure. Yeah, I've went into a session with mushrooms with the intention to talk to the mushrooms. And I was told it was like one of the very first forms of consciousness. And so
And there's
I guess
evidence
that's
for
why
that.
you feel that ancient spirit, because everything's a spirit. So, the mushroom and anything that we put in our body, even pharmaceuticals have spirits, and everything has
Well,
this option.
it's almost like we could go down to like chemical structures.
Yeah, And so, every spirit has an option just like we do, which is service to self or service to other self. And you can even see this in different pharmaceuticals and different substance. For anybody that's ever taken substances, if you think of that concept of sharing your consciousness with a spirit, and then you pay attention to the effects of it and what it makes you want to do and how it makes you feel, then you can tell how the spirit is inside that substance. So, some substance are co-creators. They're sharers. They teach you and they show you things. Some things want to take you over, like
Yeah, yeah.
benzos or like methamphetamine. Like these are service to self spirits that which like take over a host. Yeah, it's possession. I don't like the word, but like if it's a word we know, if we're trying to explain this interaction with the spirit, it takes over. So, traditionally we would call that possession. And if you ever known anybody that struggled with anything, you can kind of see that from the outside looking in of battling with a spirit, and then the difference in them with the spirit being around, so mushrooms, and different things like it's a real ancient spirit like type of consciousness, but it's like a shower,
It's
where it's
feels benevolent.
yes. So
Feels
that's
very
the thing
benevolent.
is spare that service to self, to service to other self is only a different degree of whether it's malevolent or benevolent, whether it's neutral or here to help you, or it's lower vibration and it wants to serve itself.
So what would you consider LSD?
So that was a very unique one. It's a really, really, really high vibration. Um, which mushrooms is too, but to me, that type of experience seems very grounding
Yeah,
with a high vibration versus like
yeah.
LSD is like to the to the
It's very,
stars.
very feeling.
And
And reach
every
back
time
up.
in my experience, every time I've had one of these like biblical experiences on a plant medicine, mushrooms or LSD, the process of reaching the frequency is always intense. People call it intense come up. But from, everything is a frequency, and so all we're doing is changing our radio station. We're changing our frequency to tune into these other frequencies. And so like in my experience, every time I've had those like holy shit biblical types of experiences, there's been this really like on before I got there, like I knew something was it was gonna be like one of those experiences. Like this is gonna blow your mind. Like even one time with my buddy Alex, he was like, "Buckle your seatbelt, we're about to blast off." And then, we both had this intermingled freaking biblical out of this world experience, like where we shared like the same experiences, but we're like different places, different times. It's kind of hard to explain, but it was a great reference. Is like buckle your seatbelt, we're about to blast off type every time it seems.
Yeah. I just feel like on a roller coaster, like, but I feel like I mean, that was definitely early on, where I would just like eat a handful of dried shrooms or something. But that seems like the tea like kind of evens out the waves. I think it's even more interesting when you're like, all right, it feels like it's over. And then you're like, what? So I kind of like the waves, but
Right,
it's also nice to even it out.
for sure.
Um, yeah, and it's a subtle, hard thing to explain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
consciousness in itself, or oneness, or any of the things that we talk about on higher frequencies, or that me and you talk about in regular conversation, is like really just sharing our perspective and our ideas of our experiences. Because when it really boils down to it, it's something that can't be explained, even though we love talking about it and like trying to explain it. It's only something that can be experienced. That's why, like, always on higher frequencies and stuff, is like, don't listen to what I say. I'm just a reflection talking about my experience so that you like think and seek for yourself and find that information inside of you because that's where like I found mine. So it's always that's just that thing. It's got to be experienced. Like it just can't even be explained. But that's life in itself when you really think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, on high frequencies, we talk about like the transition of the ages, the paradigm shift, and different things to that nature. Um, how do you feel about your role and that influence and that part of that change? Because it really reflects in the message you shared through your music. Um, that idea, what was it? Talk the one about Babylon falling and different things like that. Um, that message alone is the same prophecies that the Mayans talked about with the end of the world in 2012, and it's the same thing about second coming of Christ is that very thing. It's an energy that's awakening inside of us. How do you feel your music like perpetuates and feeds that?
I often say we're paradigm shifters. I got a line that says paradigm shifters, energy lifters. I think that's just like a stray line out there. I don't haven't finished that or anything, but uh, yeah, we're in pursuit. We got this feeling that we don't have words for it yet, but it is our just like you know our words that we use all the time. They came from somewhere. What's the energy of a human being thousands of years ago when it was their responsibility to make their own words. Whereas I feel like it's a generational laziness if we're like, we're just going to use all the words that have been handed down and that's it. That we're just going to flatline right here. That's not how it's supposed to go. That's not how it's gone at any point. So why are we going to and it might happen naturally for all we know,
Right.
for better or worse.
True.
Um, so to be aware of that, we want to contribute to that beneficially, which is hard to conceive in itself. Like I feel like half the time why in my music I'm not as focused on the actual word. And there's a word for this that I've been trying to think of recently. It's not about the meaning of the word. It's about the feel of how that vocalism,
Like how the what the vibration invokes or like the intention,
just just the vibration,
the vibration.
separate from the intention,
Yeah, the
right?
frequency itself.
If you can listen to your own language without automatically
Touching to the
coupling
words, basically.
coupling the meaning to it, right? Like listening to a foreign language that you don't understand, but just listening to how aesthetically the symbolisms flow. And there's an art to that in itself, because you can say one meaning a thousand different ways.
Right.
So at the very least, we can find the way that affects that subtle energy field more. Still working on that, but that's why we gotta flesh this out with the limited words we have.
Right.
Music definitely helps in that regard. Um, and early on, I was kind of I guess a hater on instrumental music or something. I don't know, but I totally get it. You know, overall, there's some things that don't need words. I mean, how many songs have you heard where it's like, oh, all right, and then the singer comes in, it's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not every human has a vocal instrument that complements, that's why we have this array of instruments,
Right.
especially nowadays. I mean, you saw in the studio today, you can do anything on the mic and make a whole album of,
With edited,
yeah.
yeah, right. Tweet. This might be
So
something you can pull off live.
Well, it depends on your definition nowadays. I mean, you put a laptop on stage,
True
and it's like, hey,
story.
I
Yeah.
still press the button. I still press the button.
Right, right, right. We
And you
had
had
that
to make it
conversation before.
beforehand. There's a balance to it, but
Sure.
this itself is an instrument these days.
Yeah. Yeah, for
So,
sure.
I mean, you could be a better musician if you're an electrician. If you actually understood the circuitry. So, getting back to what we're talking about, like um, how music affects in that way, I'm lucky to have stumbled upon it and getting there. We talk a lot about the 432 hertz, and the idea of tuning into that
Hmm.
range, because you have to tune the actual instruments
That's
to it
right.
because it's different.
Different octaves, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's different. Yeah, there's a word for that too, blanket. But
The musical theory words.
yeah, you can't. It's not like you can record everything and then just tune it all down to 432 hertz. It
Exactly.
won't be the same intervals,
Okay, I
basically.
got you. Which is
Um,
just the vibration and the
right, and to an
frequency. Yeah.
extent, to stick it still to our same concept of musical notes, the 432 hertz scale, almost when you play a chord, it almost to our trained ears, for better or worse, sounds like wobbly, sounds out of tune because we're so conditioned to the 440 hertz
Right.
scale,
Yeah, we've gotten used to it basically.
which, by the way, was like the research and who decided to put the standard into the
Gets real
440
real
hertz scale.
shady. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like global elitists is like, oh, let's
yeah.
change the
Why
frequency.
did they have an interest in that whatsoever?
So the coolest thing is I have this friend, Christopher Timms. He done this opening at this healing conference in Florida, and he was the opening speaker. And his whole thing was about music back in the day, talking about the prophecies of the here and now, like through like classic rock type stuff was like what he would have listened to. And he talks about like what these artists were doing because back in that time you had this flux of these artists they were going and seeing gurus and all that thing. And so that was a whole new ball game, that all that stuff fed and bred us in different ways, whether we know it or not. They laid the foundation for all this. And he talks about that you have a line in your DNA code and that the 440 resonates with that line in your DNA code.
440 or
Yeah, the 440. They say there's like this line in your DNA code, and the 440 resonates with that line. Um, and so to me, when I think of the whole grand scheme, like not just like my life or anything like that, the whole grand scheme of the cosmos, and you have those two options of service to self or service to other self. When you serve yourself, you're still serving your other self. Because if this is all a story and we're playing characters, then in certain situations there has to be a bad guy. And if we all come from the one infinite allness, this high vibration, it's really oddly enough, it would be such a sacrifice to lower your vibration in a way to play the characters of the bad guy,
there's definitely an archetype for that, the Judas archetype, right?
Right,
So if you look at it like in a figurative sense, or Hades,
right.
it's like he was like, yeah, I'll look over hell. It's not like he's just like intrinsically evil necessarily.
Right, right. All right, so say we take the 440 reference and then the fact that it was like these globalists were the ones who like, yeah, we come up with this 440. What if part of this transition, this new season, this paradigm shift, the change of the ages from Pisces to Aquarius that we experience, what if we're moving into this point of time where even you work against the season, all you're doing is perpetuating it and helping it? So what if there's a possibility that they had reached out with the intent to manipulate, but in fact we were already ready and designed for this interaction during this transition, which is just a theory,
I
just
like that
about
idea. I like that better than if we're, because sometimes I guess wonder if we we adapt so much between just a few generations to where it's like we adapt to deficiency, you know,
right, right.
where it's just because now we're adapted to consume trash doesn't mean I want us to.
Exactly,
I
you're
mean,
right. I
but
get
you're
that.
talking about basically there's another archetype where, the prophecy is already made in
Yes.
the person who hears prophecy and tries to make it not happen only
It
furthers
was
it
all
happening.
part of the big picture for them to do that, and
Yeah,
it's
that
already incorporated
their
into the
resistance
transit.
was part of
Exactly.
it was natural resistance required for the flow.
Yeah. So what we see if we zoom out, just like it's been in my mind frame here recently, is like we zoom out just like 200 years. We're like horse and buggies, no power, so easily to manipulate the very few people that existed, because they're just a circulating paper at best. The British are
You
coming. It
could
was
still
done on
start a
horseback.
religion.
Yeah, so, it's really interesting because right here, right now is the only time we could be who we are because all these things that happened prior to us has fed this. In my own personal experience, I would have to live many, many lifetimes researching through libraries and all this other crap, and I still wouldn't find half the information that I found to back up the information that come out of me. So I would have something come into my awareness, and then I would find ancient literature and all this other different stuff that was like, bam, this said the same thing after the information already come out. But if here and now is the only time I could do that, like I would have to been many lifetimes in the past to
Yeah,
even
yeah.
be anything like I am now. And so we see
So
this impetus, this really
it's a
fast
snowball.
process. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
so that's a good thing. That's a turning point.
Right.
And there's definitely, I mean, some idea that it's like we're at a delicate moment, where if we don't do something right, then it could derail. But there's also the idea that again, the
I look at
rising
it as a
tide is
season.
inevitable.
That's how I look at it, is a season. What I see, and and it's really funny if we look at this as ages and we think of the Piscean age and the Aquarian age. This is 2,500 years. And I'm not too fresh on my dates, but like the rise of the Roman Empire and the fall of Egypt has this energy that kind of comes up and arises, and it's really close to 2,500 years ago from our known knowledge, like what we're taught, the winners of the wars that write the history book. But we really have this energy that's been here for like 2,500 years, and like in the last 100 and damn, it's 2023 now, the last 123 years, or even the foundation of America in itself, this leaving feudalism and kings and queens behind to come up with a new experiment on ruling and interacting with ourselves, come up with this idea of republic, which is now a democracy, which we call. All that was really new and really fresh to, 300 and something years. But then that last 125, it's just been such a monumental, like mind-blowing change. And it really seems like that knowledge and power of this, it's like if it's a season and the spring is coming, it seems like for 2,500 years, this energy has tried to stop the season from coming. That's why we have all these things that seems to be set up in front of us to stop the shift from happening. But if we even just look over the last couple of years with, Corona and stuff like that, is like all this stuff is actually fed in more to make these things progress faster, you know.
Yeah. I think there's so many elements. I'm still uh flabbergasted by tomorrow, you know.
For sure. That's actually like the sweet spot where you get like what stay excited about the unknown per se. Uh Considering, if you think about that and like how your mind works, the system works and that energy from that paradigm works through manipulation and fear tactics and making people um easy in their slavery per se is like not minding their living conditions and how they live their life is kind of the things that perpetuate that. So that's in essence like how the brain works. And so it seems like this to be in that state of excited about the unknown is not living in the fear, doubt, survival part of the brain, which is really what traps us in itself. Like
That's a
anytime,
challenge in itself, yeah.
ourself,
And that's definitely exploited.
yes,
Um, yeah, I was just watching a video the other day about this. Like your fight or flight part of your brain is, your lizard brain is 40 million years old, whereas our frontal lobe
frontal cortex,
is
yeah,
only 4 million years developed. So it's like got a lot of catching up to do, with strength of who's controlling the system.
right.
So that's why we get like anxious and nervous a lot, over anxious and nervous about, daily life shit. That's supposed to be a balanced process,
Right.
where it's appropriate.
Right.
But we know there's obvious points where it's like too much. It's an overdrive or something. So it was something about, well, this specifically was that what's it called? New calm kind of thing, where it's like you hook the brain entrainment uh thing. Actually, this is what I studied as a senior for my philosophy degree. I was trying to like couple neuroscience with it, where you know, binaural beats.
Yeah.
Um, you use binaural beats kind of like as a tuning fork to your brain to promote uh, hemisphere synchronicity.
That's right. To synchronize the left and right side of the
Yeah,
brain.
all the neurons firing on the same frequency, and
Hmm.
they'll respond to that frequency if you can create it. It's a little complex because it's not in our audible range, so you gotta.
When the two become one, it's it's a spiritual parable in itself, and it also relates to those hemispheres of the brain. So
True.
binaural beats and like meditation and all these different cognitive things are still funny enough relating to the same thing of the two becoming one.
Yeah, and well, man, that's a whole wormhole right there. It really is two brains in ourself. We're like,
Well, that's that's why they call it, yeah, the masculine and feminine. And it's just got to do with masculine and feminine, and in this 3D experience we think of genitalia, but the genitalia are actually the same. One is pushed out and the other one's recessed. So in they are the same, and we carry testosterone and estrogen. So we have all these, everything has those energies.
same.
So it's a principle in itself, and the masculine and the feminine is like straight lines and circles. And uh, when you set your mind on a path and you go straight to it, that's masculine thinking, and then feminine is where the creative comes from, and the curves is like, no, we could go there, but we could take the scenic route. And that's your left and right brain. And then so synchronizing is like that middle ground of everything. That's sort of that return back to the one also. But if we're off balance on either sides of those brains, they play out also as like toxic traits in herself. Like a woman can be masculine and it'd be toxic masculinity per se. Just like same thing for a male. Like the gender doesn't have to do with the off balance. So if you're off balance in either direction, then they have these tendencies in like your everyday thing and how your mind actually works, how you're processing and filtering things is going to be more more section to those things if you're not more in sync with both of them, having them both firing close together or working on the same wavelength. They're being in harmony per
Yeah.
se.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we tend to think of it in like chemical balances, but
Right. Isn't that
they
not just a manifest
right,
of
exactly.
the
Yeah,
energy?
because well, the whole thing is that's where it gets gray in terms of correlation or causation.
Exactly.
But it's still profound. I mean, you can change those,
Chemical structures.
yeah, by changing the brainwave frequencies. And it's also just like we were talking about earlier, where for lightning to strike, it basically has to find its channel to
Hmm.
connect, and both sides are doing that, and then
Like a basically
and
positive and
then
negative, right?
yeah, and then
Yeah.
the even flow can happen.
Yeah.
So the same thing's happening like with all these different neural clusters firing at different frequencies, but if they go shoom, then it's just going to be like a fluid.
Bridge the gap per
Yeah,
se.
because imagine it's otherwise, it's like they're supposed to ideally be fluidly connected to where, oh, hey, I need that piece of information. Thanks. All
Right.
right, here's this. But if it's like constantly like, oh shit, that got lost in translation, we're constantly fighting ourselves like in that like, fuck, I need that piece of information. Well, I just go with it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
brain farts per se.
yeah,
Yeah,
like plenty
it's
of those.
just not pathways not
But it's
connected.
so common for us that it's so subtle at this point. We don't even know. We have no idea what it's like to experience like hemisphere synchronicity,
True.
to truly
Right.
have these two things communicating properly.
Yeah, I get that. And so, when we go to like certain types of festivals and stuff and we see these in our reflections that reflect us more authentically because in all this is all our reflections. It's just a discernment and there is no good or bad. There is just that reflection to be like, I am like that and I am not like that. So when we go to festivals and stuff, we see more similarities of our reflection. You really see these, when we think of man and we think of woman, traditionally square male thinking of male and female is that short hair and that strong, this masculinity as we were taught is not really true masculinity, but it's that masculine form only of masculinity. And then the female only form of masculinity was like, oh, you're only supposed to cook and you're supposed to dress like this and that and the third. When we go to these festivals in different places and we see more of those authentic reflections, we don't fit those traditional masculine molds because in essence of finding ourselves, we're finding balance and in that essence, and we're finding the balance between the masculine and feminine principles within ourselves, and that is reflected on the outside, and then our reflections that we meet on the outside, like when we go to festivals, you see more of that synchronization reflected in their expression and like how they dress and how they talk and the music they listen to type things.
And that itself is a balancing in the grand scheme of things. There's been plenty of the overt idealism of
And
masculinity.
yeah, so we could even see that if we were thinking energies and masculine energies, which would either extreme is out of balance, obviously. And so we really went through this long period of time where it seems like the masculine was very out of balance and overreaching. Only male rulers. Even when America was founded, women couldn't vote. You had to be landowners. Like that is a that is an imbalance of the masculine
An
mind to even
obvious
conceive
imbalance. Yeah.
this, and that's a long period of time also, that it's been that way. Like women rulers, we hear about it in Egyptian times, but like that's, you know,
Well, that's when like you can see the. I mean, again, there's always the eventually the paradigm shift, but uh, and there's necessary levels and layers of suffering or things that are necessary or foundational or something like that. But within that realization, there's also a bunch of things on top that pose as the necessary that are really exploiting that, and taking advantage of all of us energetically.
you got an example?
Nope,
But
slipped my
you mean in
mind.
like, say like places where there's a bunch of money and these people charge these ridiculous amounts of money for retreats and things like that and that type of thing, like exploiting
No,
that
so I
thing,
guess what we were
or
talking about um, with you know, over masculinity or that whole, you know, while it is changing, it it can always happen quicker.
yeah,
Like
I think that relies with us
yeah,
in itself. If this is all our reflection, I've had this experience with plant medicine where the whole thing started off when I was thinking, like, why is there people starving in the world? If we're all one, and I have this grand influence on all this, then why does this exist in my experience anymore? This was kind of like my question at the beginning of this journey, and it come to me that like these things still exist in me in some shape or form, and that's why so. Yeah, and that message that come through, the more that we actually do our due diligence, I guess, if I was to try to call it something, the more we seek and find and authenticate and express that true parts of ourselves, then all of these things inevitably are eliminated by that. And we really see that when we even like tap into a little bit of quantum mechanics and the quantumness of this whole reality. It's almost a scientific truth.
yeah, yeah. And there's so much programming like behind us to try to like refute that. It's hard to maintain that revelation. You know, regular, what I guess Buddha would call Maya. It's like the big illusion of all this stuff. So when you're like about to attain enlightenment, it just gets hit. That cloud gets heavier on top of you. Like the veil gets thicker. It's like trying to pull every card to keep you in the matrix.
As soon as you said that, like, that indubious line come to me about if you reach, you push away, so become a welcoming. Um, and that kind of comes back to the thing that I've been talking to you about. That's kind of been in and out, come to me like 5, 6 years ago, but it's really become more of a practice and a thing. Is this understanding of surrendering, and so surrender is the same thing as welcoming. We reach and we push away. Because if in essence we already are. What I'm saying? There's nothing to become. There's nothing to obtain because we already are that, you know. And so that's that surrender. It's like there's really nothing to reach for. Like when we're trying to poke our head through the cloud of enlightenment is is pushing it away per se.
Right.
With that idea of reaching that point of enlightenment where we really hadn't even quite found that comfortableness of already being it. And something that really happened like around the time that when I met you guys at Pyro, and um it was I was looking to go listen to Mike, and then there was Lisa was like, we got to go to this thing, and Mike's gonna be there, and it was pyro, and it's all about phoenixes, and like I got a tattoo on my arm, and I have this real connection with the phoenix, as we all should, as we go through our journeys, because it's the same metaphorical process, to rise from the ashes. Um, I had this beautiful magical experience that I could never think of in my entire life, with all these beautiful people and all this great fucking energy and this, this big hope for humanity per se, because that's what those things give us. It shows us, it recharges us for us to go and reflect that energy out, when we go to those types of things.
True.
But we also like heal the land that we gather on, and then that energy lingers around. Anybody that comes in touch with that land after we're gone, like we affect them. Like quantumly, this is proven. Like that's how like all of it works. And during that experience, it was at the end, and we were eating, and we were chit chatting like we do. Um, I kind of had this understanding that we were already in this energy, and it's come back to me a couple times now. I feel like we are already, it's the saying the same thing, but in a different way. We already are this thing, there's nothing to become. I already feel like when we talk about like a paradigm shift and all these, the change of the ages, something inside of me says that we're already in it. Like we're already there, but we don't even know how to play with it yet, per se.
I can feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's so new. Like, and if we think about all this stuff that we know about prophecies and this and that and the third, like, we live in a time where there is no prophecy. All those prophecies have come. The second coming of Christ lives inside of me and you. We are a reflection of each other, of that same thing. It is already here. That's prophesied. The Mayan calendar, the end of the old world. Holy shit, the old world's been dying for over 100 years. Our country being founded on democracy was already the death of a world. So like if we was trying to pick a
Yeah,
point in a
literally all the old
prophecy,
world.
you know, we can apply that in so many closer time frames. We can already see the system that we've created dying. Like it's already imploding in itself because we already know it's the I and the going to the and the me going to the we. So we're going to see that structure also change governments and all this other stuff. But what we see on the regular is these people being drawn back to the old ways of that community living and that helping one another and taking that sovereignty back. So like I can see that being that new paradigm way of life, you know. Um, but they also see so much that's already like died off in itself too.
I'd say it's good to see that whatsoever, and it's hard to conceive a local mindset globally, like where there's that many small communities
Right,
all
right.
together who have all the resources they need, or there's, what replaces government or money, that kind of thing.
It does seem unfathomable in its essence, but to me, like I've had these experiences, like and in the right environment around the tribe, where like you can feel that that's a possibility. It seems like it may be something in ourself that even is saying like that's not possible, like a program in itself to think that to not even be able to feel that possibility. Because
Well,
in essence, like what is to come, I don't even think we can really wrap our minds around how awesome and beautiful that which is to come, you know. I think it's going to be that mind blowing. It's like we could think about how awesome of a world that we come here to create with living and sharing together, and whatever we can picture, it seems like it will be a million times more beautifully mind-blowing than we can even conceive.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just
It's
s-
really hard to think about not working under this system, no doubt. But wonder what people thought about that come from freaking feudalism, like kings and queens that come over to America and they're like, we're doing a democracy and you can vote if you got some land, but no, not you over there. And they're like,
but think about
this
this
ain't
in
gonna work.
America too. If you got some land, like plenty of land at the time, all over, but it's like, hey, the king didn't give you that. So I thought it was kind of weird, like America coming out and being like, we're America, but anybody who got land from the king, you can still keep all your land. That's still good. It's like that should have been like reset, right? Like
Right.
everybody gets a little bit of land. Okay, chill out. It's like,
What
but the
about
king
out
gave me this whole
west?
state.
What about out west? Like whenever we bought like the whole
Yeah,
Midwest and stuff, that was kind of more of a take thing.
that was homesteaded then, yeah.
And
So
then
then
like
it's
the
like
Civil War,
if
they
you can
done a
keep a
lot of
house,
giving away.
right?
Like in the South and different places, like most soldiers were paid with land. I even know somebody like his great relative, they still live on the land that they got from the service in the Civil War. And he got 325 acres, close to the house. And it's still in the family, like the majority of it. And I don't know how many generations far away the guy I is that I know, but he's got like 50 acres of the 325, that was payment from the Civil War.
Wow, damn, that's wild to trace
Right.
stuff like that.
He's actually knows enough about his family history. He could track it all the way back to before they migrated to the States, like Scotch Irish or some shit.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, like, so what do you need to live? It's pretty basic and
Basic.
simple.
Yep.
And now think about all the things in a city, like you could cut out. I mean, we should be able to cover all the things that we need first off, because there's all this other shit on top of it,
Right.
that it's like only we give it value. It
Yeah.
has no intrinsic value
True.
unless we want it. And
Right.
half the time we got to be convinced that we want it. And then there's a whole industry for that.
That is. And so, all right, so if we see like the dying of this energy, consumerism is something that dies with that because that's a programming in
And
itself.
that's all it is. It's a programming for programming.
So, I feel like I come here to create communities. I learned carpentry and building and stuff when I was young, and then like when I kind of started awakening to these things, I was like, how'd my life? Why was my life like this? And then once I realized that I want to start a community, I was like, oh, look at this interesting design you put out here, that I learned all the things. Like I literally could create a community with my own two hands for just the stuff and enough time. There's like literally nothing in the world to stop that. But, we also live in this technological age, whereas, we're looking to go back to the old ways, but we're not going back in time and giving away knowledge because technology is just an extension of our knowledge that we've found. It's just us playing with the things that we've experimented with. And so, solar power and renewable energy in a smaller confinement, more taking care of yourself, and then you got structure, clean water, and food. Like we used to always handle these things ourselves, really, in the last short period of time where all these things and the programming has become stronger to where all those things have been taken back from us.
Yeah.
So I feel like we could create a community, and have renewable energy and have clean, healthy food that we grow on site and still be able to do things to export or sell to other communities or other people to help with infrastructure, and different things like that, or even if it's bartering, because in essence that would be closer to a more harmonious exchange between communities and individuals and stuff. But 3D printing and stuff, the very first 3D printer ever created was made in Africa to create foundations for houses out of sand, you know? So I think I know that I could tinker around, especially if I had like just a couple other people within a little bit of knowledge about this and that. You know, we can make 3D printed houses that are like made out of hempcrete, that are like carbon
Yeah,
neutral, that are hurricane proof, flood proof, and we can make these out of resources we grow on our own land. And, you know, and 3D print like different things that we need, like silverware, like all these different, you know, and then
yeah,
there's like smithing with metal, like there's all this, to me, that's like that new frontier is the more we become interconnected, it seems like the more our knowledge base and stuff that we become, the more self-sufficient we become, the more the individual itself becomes more knowledgeable of being able to do all those things. You know, like the future-based education, you would know how to forage for food, you would know how to grow food, you would know basic carpentry skills, you know all the regular survival skills in my school in the community. Like that's what school would be about.
yeah.
And we would literally be just redoing the whole show, you know?
Or at the very least, like, I mean, well, the state we're in right now is that we have all these gadgets that don't guide us toward that necessarily, you know, at least as obviously. And we subscribe to them all. Instead, if like they geared technology toward, you know, it's like you seen the life straw or something, you know,
Yes.
it's like
Yeah.
things, simple things like that. I don't know how to make a life straw, but cool. I bought one for, or was gifted one
Right.
just to, and that could save my life. And it's
True.
that simple.
And that could
Like,
really save lives all across the globe.
and it's not like I know how to use a phone, but I'm just as willing to, or how to, you know, build a phone,
True.
just as willing to use it. The same thing could be like, I mean, if we lived out somewhere and we had just enough technology to purify our water and help us, you know, set up, grow stuff. But luckily, there's like more courses out there for all that stuff too. It's good to, because like regenerative farming and
Permaculture and things
yeah,
like that.
that
Yeah.
I would like to get more into, and it's it takes a village, you
Yeah, so you
know.
know, I think
So
about the trade that I learned because in essence, those are trades,
yeah,
you know, and I learned a trade by being dropped in it, you know, so I feel like the more we become community, the more we learn those things naturally just by helping the guy that knows Blink or, you know, by hands on. Like, I think
yeah,
that's how I learned how to build anything was literally like put hands on helping somebody. And then I caught on enough to where I could do Blink. And I did that all the way from not knowing shit to I can build whatever. So, like, that's. That actually they actually perpetuate one another in themselves just by making those steps and those progress towards that and
just
trying to
hanging out.
immerse that have that full immersion into it really, you know.
Sure. Yeah, man. Full immersion.
Right. So you got anything you want to share about things you got coming up or any events or
Yeah, well, you
anything to
know,
be looking out for?
Pyro Music Festival is going to be a very similar gathering to well everything we've been talking about.
True, true.
Pyro Music Festival, June 2nd to the 4th in Ohio. Check it out. We're happy to be there jamming full band. And then we fly out to Montana for Cup Fest. Gonna sample a bunch of tasty treats.
Nice, nice, nice.
And yeah, just laying out a bunch of singles in the meantime.
Heck yeah. So what kind of websites and stuff can people go to find you guys?
treehousetheband.com or yourfavoritething.com/treehousetheband at treehousetheband treehouse with an exclamation mark. You'll find us on Spotify, all that good stuff. Yeah, I think that covers it.
Nice, nice, nice. And as always, you can catch these on higher frequency episodes. This is episode number 32 with Jeremy Anderson of TreeHouse. You can find it on the website at higherfrequencies.life, or on Facebook or Apple Music, all those normal things, same stuff. As always, such a blessing to have you, brother.
Thanks for having me, brother.
And thank you guys for listening and joining us as always. Uh, Peace and love.
All right.
Namaste.